They laughed at him. That was the first sound the boy remembered when he dared to speak his dream aloud. One day, he said, his voice trembling but firm, "I will be a gladiator." The other boys burst into cruel laughter, their voices echoing through the training yard. They pointed at his thin arms, his narrow shoulders, his small frame. He was not like them, broad, strong, fearless. He was smaller, frailier, with eyes too full of hope for the blood-stained world he longed to enter. And so they mocked him, dismissing his words as the delusions of a scrawny dreamer. That afternoon, when the sun dipped low and painted the stones in amber light, the boy sat alone in the dust, tears streaking his face. He pressed his fists to his eyes, wishing he could bury his shame deep in the earth. But then, suddenly, a voice, deep and commanding, cut through the silence. "Tears bring dust storms, young gladiator." The boy startled, his breath catching, and turned. Before him stood a man larger than life. His presence alone seemed to bend the air. It was Maximus, the retired champion, a legend whispered about in taverns and shouted about in the arena. His scars told stories older than the boy's life, his broad shoulders carried battles fought and won, and his eyes, sharp as blades, studied the boy with unexpected gentleness. The boy's voice cracked as he spoke, spilling out his sorrow, his loneliness, his dream that no one believed in. He spoke of the laughter of his peers, of the cruelty in their eyes, of the unbearable weight of his own smallness. And Maximus listened. He did not laugh, nor did he pity. He listened as though every word mattered. When the boy finally fell silent, trembling from the confession, Maximus's lips curved into a faint smile. "A champion is not measured by the size of his body," he said, his voice like thunder rolling across the mountains, "but by the fire in his heart." Those words took root deep within the boy, planting a seed stronger than the jeers of his tormentors. And so began a journey that would demand everything of him, his body, his will, his spirit. Years passed. Years of grueling mornings and endless nights, of calloused hands and aching muscles. Under the watchful eye of Maximus, the boy trained harder than anyone. Where others gave up, he pushed forward. Where others faltered, he endured. He carried stones until his back nearly broke, swung swords until his arms bled, and ran drills until his lungs screamed for air. Yet every drop of sweat became another brick in the foundation of the man he was becoming. The boy grew sharper, faster, more agile. His size, once his weakness, became his advantage. He learned to move like wind through the gaps of giants, to strike where armor could not reach, to endure with the patience of stone. Maximus shaped him, but it was the boy's own fire that kept the forge alive. And then the day came. He was now a man. The boy was standing in the heart of the Coliseum, where thousands of eyes bore down upon him. The roar of the crowd was deafening, yet it fell into silence when the gates opened and the underdog stepped forth. For many, he was still the frail dreamer, the boy who was never meant to wield a blade. But on that day, in the shadow of giants, he would prove them all wrong. The battle began, and the earth itself seemed to quake beneath the clash of steel. His opponents were towering, seasoned, each one a monster in the arena. Yet the small warrior met them head-on. He moved with precision, every step calculated, every strike fueled by years of pain and perseverance. The crowd gasped as he slipped between the swings of men twice his size, striking back with the ferocity of a lion. Sweat drenched his body, blood stained the sand, and his breath came in ragged bursts. The giants pressed him, each blow a mountain crashing upon his shoulders. But he would not break. With each strike, he remembered the laughter of the boys who mocked him. With each dodge, he remembered the voice of Maximus telling him where true strength was born. The battle raged until it came down to one final moment. A giant lunged, his blade flashing in the sun. The crowd cried out, certain the small warrior would fall. But with speed honed by years of training, he slipped aside, twisting low, and drove his blade upward with every ounce of fire that burned within him. The giant roared, stumbled, and collapsed to the earth. The arena exploded into cheers. The man they had doubted, mocked, and dismissed now stood victorious. His name was Kai, and the world would never forget it. Kai is now the champion, voices thundered from every corner of the Coliseum. Yet as the dust settled, another sound emerged, a familiar voice from the shadows of the crowd. His childhood tormentor stood before him, no longer proud or cruel, but broken and afraid. "He's still that dwarf kid, anytime," one of them muttered, but their words rang hollow. For there before them stood Kai, the great gladiator, the champion whose fire had burned brighter than their scorn. "Please, forgive us," one stammered, eyes wide with regret. "We never meant it. Please, don't hurt us." Kai looked at them, the boys who once mocked his dream, now trembling in the shadow of his triumph. He could have turned his blade on them. He could have answered cruelty with vengeance. But instead, he raised his head high, his voice calm yet unyielding. "Though you never believed in me," he said, his words carrying across the hushed arena, "I believed in myself." And in that moment, the crowd knew, Kai's victory was not just over giants of flesh and bone, but over the chains of doubt, cruelty, and fear that had once held him captive. The lesson was golden, timeless. Strength is not born in the size of the body, but in the fire of the soul. Ridiculed, dismissed, but they cannot be destroyed if the dreamer refuses to let go. So remember Kai, the boy who was laughed at, the man who became a champion. Let his story remind you that no matter how small, how weak, how doubted you may feel, the fire within you can forge greatness the world will one day see. And if this tale moved you, if you felt the dust of the Coliseum and the triumph of the underdog in your heart, do not let the story end here. Share your thoughts in the comments, let your voice be heard, and stand with us in the circle of storytellers. Like this video, subscribe to Golden Folk Stories, and carry with you the lesson that belief is stronger than doubt, and fire is stronger than fear. For every story we tell leaves a spark, and together, we can keep the fire alive.